Well, the Florida Gators took care of business on Saturday night in front of another sold-out crowd at Ben Hill Griffin Stadium in Gainesville. They beat the Kentucky Wildcats 48-20. Okay, first off, thank goodness. Where do I begin with this one? I feel like there is so much good to talk about, which is not something we felt a whole lot the last couple of years. But after scoring 48 points, I think it is only fitting we recap the offense first. Let's start with freshman running back Jaden Baugh, who tied a record 5 rushing touchdowns. That record was originally set by Tim Tebow in 2007 against South Carolina. And then Trey Burton tied that record as well, also against Kentucky, actually, in 2010. I don't know about you, but I heard a lot of run the ball throughout the stadium on Saturday night. He is a freaking weapon. And obviously, Baugh got the start because Montrell Johnson is injured. And he carried the ball 22 times for 106 yards and 5 touchdowns. Another freshman that you may have heard about also got the start because the senior was injured. DJ Lagway was 7 of 14 for 259 yards and 1 interception. And how about Chimmery DK, who was good again? And Elijah Badger had himself a day as well. 3 passes for a massive 148 yards. Where has this offense been, right? Kentucky had the overall 3rd ranked defense in the country. And this was a game that we really thought points were going to come at a premium. I talked last week about how, okay, if they can get to 21 points, they can probably win. They can hold Kentucky to less, but if they can get to 21 points, wasn't expecting 48. And 48 points are great, but you know what's even more exciting for me? We were 7 of 7 in the red zone. That is something Gator fans have been looking at, all season long. Think about the Tennessee game, the amount of points Florida left on the board. The beginning of that game, the first half, 4 out of 5 trips to the red zone resulted in 0 points for the Gators. That was the game, right? If Florida scored on those possessions in the first half, they probably beat the Volunteers in Knoxville. So even though we were excited about, the effort that we saw from the defense, the fact that the team hung with the top 10 program, who, by the way, picked off Alabama last night. So playing them to overtime doesn't look so bad after that. But that was a huge gap in Florida's play last week. So the fact that they were 7 for 7 in the red zone against a defense that is statistically better than Tennessee is some major improvement. Now let's give it up for that Florida defense. Okay, so Kentucky's offense, not great. But I think this defense still gets props for stringing together their 3rd impressive outing in a row. They have gotten better since the bye week. Okay? They are flying around, giving full effort, really playing for each other. It's fun to watch. And the difference is stark between how the defense is playing now and how they played the first part of the season. They held Kentucky to 309 yards, and they were 1 for 5 on 4th down, including a really, really impressive goal line stand. The second quarter, they were tough. They added 3 interceptions to their season total as well, which takeaways has been something that we have harped on for multiple years, something that the Napier teams were not doing well. 3 in 1 game, that is pretty darn impressive, including what may have been the highlight of the night for Gator fans. I know for sure it was for me. It happened right in front of my seats, but Cormani McLean, this is a kid who Florida really wanted out of high school. He is a local guy, right from Lakeland High School, not far from the University of Florida, our backyard. He ended up committing to Colorado and Dion, and things went south there. He transferred during the offseason, and so Florida was able to pick up that former 5-star kid that they really wanted, but in the transfer portal. And rumors kind of swirled that he had to get his head on straight to be successful. He came here on as a walk-on. right? Just needed a chance. And we really haven't heard a whole lot about him in season, but that changed last night. He had a 29-yard pick six, and then it felt like the entire bench cleared to celebrate with him in the end zone. Celebration penalty be damned. It kind of felt like it signaled new life for both McLean and the Gators defense. It was so cool to watch how much they obviously care about and support him, how excited they all were for him. It was just one of those moments that really stood out from Saturday night and really just kind of a feel-good thing. Now let's talk a little bit about special teams. Not the best unit on the field on Saturday. Trace Mack was good. He was 2 for 2, but the Gators did give up a 99-yard touchdown return. Not ideal. Jeremy Crawshaw had another solid effort. So, good, but not necessarily great. But you know what? If your special teams are good and your offense and your defense put on the show that they did last night, we don't have to have a special teams that wins games. We just have to have a special teams that doesn't cost us games. Okay, so where does this leave us, right? I hesitate to get too high just because we beat a 3-3 Kentucky team, obviously now a 3-4 Kentucky team, but it's still progress. This is a Kentucky team that has beaten the Gators the last 3 times the teams have played and 4 out of the last 5. So it was really, really important to kind of just get this monkey off the Gators' back. You have to take care of business against the teams that you are supposed to beat. That's step 1 in a rebuild, right? And we're 3 years in, and so it's frustrating for Gator fans that we might still be at the beginning of a rebuild. But first, you beat the teams that you should beat. Then you start to beat the teams that you shouldn't beat. This is a team the Gators should beat, right? They should always beat Kentucky. We went 31 years of beating Kentucky. And they finally got that done. Now Billy Napier is 1-2 against Kentucky. But the resounding way the Gators beat the Wildcats certainly feels like progress to me. And think about this. This is a Kentucky team that only lost to Georgia 13-12. They beat Ole Miss 20-17. They can play. And prior to this game, the Wildcats had only allowed 31 points once, and that was to South Carolina. South Carolina beat them. Outside of that game, they have held teams to 0 points, 13 points, 6 points, 17 points, and 20 points. That is a very, very good defense. 3rd in the country, in fact. The Gators are sitting at 4-3 and 3-2 in conference play with the meat of the schedule coming up. So now this week we get a bye before we play Georgia in Jacksonville, then go straight to Austin to play Texas, and then back home to play LSU, Ole Miss, and then we go to Tallahassee to play Florida State, all in back-to-back weeks. The next time the Gators will be favored will probably be against Florida State Thanksgiving weekend. But can the Gators upset somebody that they shouldn't? Is Coach Napier able to show us a peek into the future with DJ Lagway that is enticing enough to retain him? I don't know. But I'll tell you what. This coaching staff and this team deserve a day or two to celebrate this one before they get back to work in the bye week. I have a lot of questions about this vast improvement that we've seen the last 3 weeks and why it took so long to appear. But there is no denying that this team is playing cohesively. They are playing with a mission. They are playing for each other. And it sure is fun to watch. I am here for this Gator team. It has been an exciting time in the swamp on Saturday night for the first time in, kind of a while, right? It was a show put on by all aspects of this team. Gator fans, keep it dialed into this channel as I bring you some great interviews in this bye week. And if you want to check out my Patreon channel, it's patreon.com/Allie Peak. Anytime I hear some tidbits of information, I'll throw them up on that board. Or if you just, want to show support from the channel, that's the way to do it. But make sure you're subscribed here, you're dialed in. We're going to have a lot of content. Just because it's the bye week doesn't mean it's a break over here. It's absolutely not. As always, go Gators.